All right, everyone. Welcome to Celtics Life Live, episode 23. I'm your host, Mike Dyer, joined by Celtics Life editor, lead editor, the chief, Mark Van Dusen.
Hello.
Of course, right now, won't let me click to anyone individually because we always have technical difficulties. There's Mark's picture, at least. Celtics Life writer Eric Blysdale. What's up, Eric?
Hey.
And Paul Colahan, also one of the Celtics Life writers. What's going on, Paul?
What's going on, man?
Not much. What do you guys say we dive right into it, get to the topic of the day, which I guess would be Joe Johnson. Celtics play the Bucks tonight, but I'd say the biggest news of the day is Joe Johnson getting bought out from the Nets, which is good news no matter what, because that's going to make the Nets a little bit worse. Joe Johnson's actually been really good the last 2 months or so. So he's off. The Nets should help them. Big tank game tonight in Phoenix, and then there's I think 6 different teams that Johnson's been linked to, including the Celtics, although I did see one tweet where the Cavs and the Heat and maybe one other team were in the lead and the Celtics were behind. So why don't we get right to it? What do you think of Johnson getting released by the Nets? How much does it help the draft pick? And would you welcome Joe Johnson back for that 15th roster spot? Mark, you wrote on this today, right?
Yeah, I did.
Why don't you go first, then?
All right. It definitely helps. I don't know if it's going to make a huge, regarding the pick we're getting from the Nets, I don't know if it's going to make a huge actual difference or not. But, he's definitely been good this year, and they're going to get worse. The thing I couldn't believe when I looked it up is he's playing 33.9 minutes a game, number 1 on the team at 34 years old, which seems crazy. But I guess, they got nothing to lose. He's one of their stars, so they're running him out there. They're not really playing for anything, no reason to tank. So, yeah, they should get worse. They have no depth coming off the bench really to replace him. He's their 3rd leading scorer right now with Jarrett Jack out. And I don't know if he is this year or not, but he's the guy who will win a game every now and then. He'll make a big shot. So just the Nets no longer having that. It should be good for a couple games. Maybe they'll not win 2 to 3 more games that they would have won anyway. Whether or not that actually makes a difference with the draft pick, who knows? But yeah, like you said, the most recent tweets I saw was that Cleveland was the leader to get him, maybe followed by Atlanta and then Boston after that. I just saw somebody asked Brad Stevens pregame if the Celtics were interested. He obviously didn't say anything. I don't even think he's allowed to till after Johnson clears waivers tomorrow at 5 p.m. And I think he'd be a great guy to have on Boston. As long as he's okay with his role, that he's not going to play a lot, he's going to come in off the bench. But like I just said about the Nets not having him, the Celtics have no veteran presence coming off the bench at all. Like Evan Turner, 3rd oldest guy on the team, is their best veteran bench presence or scorer type of deal. So Johnson could be that guy. And the Celtics always struggle in crunch time. Isaiah Thomas, he's your number 1 guy, but he's not a great crunch time scorer when you need to get a shot off. He's just 5'9", he's kind of short. And Joe Johnson has hit a bunch of big shots in his career. And even if they only use him on occasion, maybe he wins a game or 2. I bet if he came to Boston, he would have one big playoff moment for sure. So, yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, he just hit a game winner versus the Nuggets a few weeks ago.
Oh, that's right. You're right. He did. I forgot about that.
Very annoying in the moment. Eric, why don't we go to you? I'm having some light freezing issues. I hope that does not continue.
He makes all the sense in the world for Boston for all the reasons that Mark stated. I just don't see it's going to happen because he is going to have better chances with better teams. The Cavs are rumored to be a favorite of his. The Hawks as well. Both those teams could end up being a lot better than the Celtics are for a true championship run. Oklahoma City as well. He could be a really good piece for them. And he's going to be chasing rings, and he'd be great for us. He'd be a nice piece. He fits a lot of the issues that we have with scoring and scoring off the bench. But I just don't think that he's going to end up here because he's going to have much better opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah, I do agree with that, Eric. Paul, why don't you go on this? Mark, do you mind sending a tweet out that this is live because my computer is doing weird stuff, and I don't want to open any more tabs. This is live TV, so this type of stuff that happens on live TV.
Done.
What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I agree with Mark and Eric as well. He'd be a great piece. I don't know what our chances are to get him. I know that we can offer the same amount of money as Atlanta.
The room exception, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's obviously good news. I don't know if it will make the difference in the end of the day, but a little bit more excited about him just leaving the Nets because they're so bad. Any incremental change in that team to make them a little worse could make the difference between a few extra losses and a few extra ping pong balls. So That was definitely good news today.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, what you said about the money, I think the Celtics can pay him $2.8 million, and Atlanta could also, and all the other teams, I'm not 100% on this, I think could pay him only $950,000. I'm a little unsure on that.
Right.
But either way, that guy's made a ton of money in his career. Like, it'd be kind of weird if he chose Boston or Atlanta for $2 million as opposed to going to Cleveland, which I think you're right. They're probably the huge front runner.
And plus, it's a prorated version of that. So
Oh,
it's
good point.
And it's like he might make $1 million with the Celtics and a few $100,000 with the Cavs or whatever it might be. Yeah, I just think there's no guaranteed minutes here for Joe Johnson. Like, you'd like to think there is, but they have a really good rotation. If he was a big man, I'd say there definitely is, because I think there's a weakness there with the Zeller, Jerebko, especially right now with Olynyk out, where there are some minutes available for a big if there were one available. But with Joe Johnson, they're so loaded at the 2 and the 3 right now. When you look at Crowder and Turner and Bradley and Smart and Thomas, and I know those guys are also playing point, but those guys combined are chewing up 3-year positions. So there's no guaranteed minutes, and they're not a championship contender. So he'd have to go to a second-tier, at best, contender and take a non-guaranteed role. If he's going to take a non-guaranteed role, why not go with Cleveland, who's basically a guarantee to go to the finals and then take a shot at Golden State, even though I think everyone thinks they won't, land that shot. At least they have that. So I think it's very unlikely. Eric, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say that if he did end up in Boston, I could see him playing as the other guard with Smart. I think that they would be able to mask each other well. Smart would take whoever the best backcourt player is on the floor at the time, and Johnson would take over a bit of the offense, and so you wouldn't have to worry about. I know Marcus's jumper's been better lately, but you'd have a go-to scorer coming off the bench that I think he would easily find minutes.
Yeah, the only reason I don't know about that is because you got to go back to what, at least a 10-man rotation if he's here, or you're taking minutes away from guys who are playing really well, minutes away from Bradley, minutes away from Turner. I just think that there's only so many minutes. So I agree with what you're saying. He fits in with the second unit in terms of that role, but you'd be taking away whatever minutes he's getting are coming away from one of those guys playing really well. I just don't think he's going to end up here. He's going to go to a place with a better chance to win a title. I think that's pretty clear. Let's keep it going with the active Celtics before we get into some of the trade deadline stuff. Just one thing I was thinking of, just general thoughts on this team. What are your favorite thing about this current Celtics team and your least favorite thing? I'll go first. I feel like a lot of people's favorites might be the same. It's that I've never seen an NBA team that can be down more with less time left and still have a chance to win. It's insane. They were down 8 with 33 seconds to go the other night, and they had a shot at a game-winning 3, like a legitimate shot at a game-winning 3. The Cleveland game, down 5 with 7 seconds left, and they won it. Orlando, they were down 10 with 55 seconds left, and they cut back to within 3 late in that game. Just insane. I don't know if it's like a combination of this incredible effort that they never give up, and that they have this tenacious defensive team that always seems to come up with 2 turnovers in the last minute of these games. So that's my favorite thing, is that, like, okay, the Celtics are down 7 with 40 seconds left. If you're watching college basketball, March Madness is famous for that, because teams don't know how to close games in March Madness in college basketball. NBA teams know how to close games out. All of them do. Even the really crappy teams know how to close games out. Yet the Celtics find ways to put their nose back in the game. It really is kind of insane. My least favorite aspect of the Celtics team, their 2 biggest weaknesses in my mind, in terms of actual on-the-floor stuff. Offensively, they shoot a ton of threes and they stink at it, so that's a little bit frustrating to me. They're 6th worst in basketball, but the style of that play, I love the style they play, even if the threes don't go in enough. I hate how much they foul. And I know some of it goes hand in hand with their aggressiveness, but oh my God, they're putting teams on the line like 40 times a game in the last 3 weeks. It's murdering them. It's like every team is hack a DeAndre without trying. They're last in the NBA in foul shots allowed. Whatever they're doing, and lately they've been terrible defensively and giving up the foul. So it's not like some really positive thing that just happens to have a negative aspect to it in the fouling. They got to get their act straight when it comes to putting teams on the line, because they are losing games because they are allowing teams who are average offensively to shoot 40 free throws a game. They go up 32 a game for the year on average. So that's my least favorite thing. It's really been bugging me lately. Paul, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree about. I would say the best and worst thing is, no lead is safe, and that kind of works both ways with this team, where they can be up 20 in the second quarter, and you're gonna have to still watch that game to see if they can close it out. But I mean, we've had a lot of good moments this year with this team, especially leading up to the All-Star break, where they were just, competing with the best teams in the league, coming back, making clutch shots, really fighting. And as a Celtics fan, it's definitely a team that you just really want to get behind. So I would say that they just need to be a little bit more consistent on play for 48, because the peaks and valleys are a little bit frustrating with this team.
Absolutely. Eric?
Favorite part is just how hard they play. They all seem to really get along. The chemistry is great. Isaiah has been embraced, and he loves the team back. Marcus Smart, the Cobra, with some of his amazing plays. They look like they're having a lot of fun, and they're winning games at the same time, and they can only go up from here, so it's all great that way. The negative part is just pretty much because of how young they are, like you guys mentioned with the fouls. I think that a lot of that is just youth. I don't know why Avery is fouling so much. You'd think he'd be able to figure that out by now. He's been in the league long enough where he should know not to make some of those fouls. And like Paul was saying, no lead is safe. I don't like the fact that we'll go up by 20 and we'll look amazing and just dropping threes and running the floor and getting steals. And then for like 8 minutes, the team looks like it's a D-League team. It has no idea what it's doing. Guys look like they're out of place. The defense just collapses and has no idea what it's doing. But I do attribute that to them being young. I think that's things that they can work on as they progress and mature. So even though it sucks, I think it's things that can be worked on, and they probably won't be issues in the near to late future.
Mark?
Yeah, Mike, same thing about my favorite thing. Like you said, I've never, ever seen an NBA team like this. Like, they're always down 8, or when they are down 8 with a minute left, you can't turn it off because you know they're going to get within a possession or two every single time. And it's sort of been building as the season went along. Like, they kind of did it early on in the year, but they never won one. And then I can't remember what was the first one that they won. And then they had that Milwaukee game. Yeah, was it the Cleveland one? Or was it the Milwaukee one? They got it to overtime, but then they didn't win.
Yeah, Milwaukee too.
Then they got the Orlando one. Anyway, they've won 2 recently, and then they almost did it again. And now I just want to wait and see. Like, is this going to keep happening? Can they really do this every time when they're down big late? And at some point, it's going to happen in the playoffs, and it's going to be just crazy. And so that's obviously the most exciting thing to watch. The fouling is so bad. I saw a stat maybe a week or 2 ago that they lead the league in getting off the most shots. And at first I thought, all right, it's because they play an up-tempo style of ball, because they're forcing a lot of turnovers. And then I realized that's not really it. It's just because they foul the other team all the time, so the other team's shooting free throws when they're just taking regular shots from the field. But the thing I dislike the most is that they're really predictable in what their success is going to be. Like, when they're playing their great team ball and spreading the floor and running up and down, you know they're going to play well. But like you guys have said, as soon as it slows down and they forget the way their offense is supposed to run or whatever, you know that they're in big trouble, and they just can't play. They can only play one way. They have no backup plan. Like, they can't just divert to their star and be like, all right, you just take over the game and get us a couple buckets. And I mean, every once in a while, Evan Turner kind of does that, but that's not the guy you want doing that. So I wish they could play better when their regular style broke down. I wish they had a plan B that was more effective.
That's so true. Their best is awesome, and their worst is disgusting to watch, even if it's for 8 minutes at a time, like Eric says. Let's move along to the trade deadline, or maybe the trade deadline. If you guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's pretty good. Been working on that one all day. Celtics did nothing. Most of the league did nothing except small little maintenance moves. I guess the Pistons were probably the unanimous winner of the deadline, at least looking forward to the next few years. Most Celtics fans seemed to have reasonable takes on this, that it really, don't overpay for Al Horford or Dwight Howard or some other rental who's 30 who either walks or you pay $150 million to. Let's go. So, do you guys all agree with that? Is there anyone who was disappointed at the deadline?
No.
We all agree. Let's get to the Okafor thing then. because I think that's very interesting. The rumor that a package built upon the Nets pick for this year, currently 4th lottery pick for Jahlil Okafor, Sixers rookie, 19 years old, averaging 17 and 7, obviously an offensive force already, not known for his defense. What do you guys think of that deal? Let's say it was the Nets pick and filler. We're not giving up Smart. We're not giving up another one of the Nets picks. Nets pick and another first. Nets pick and something lesser, maybe Sully's expiring. I don't know, something reasonable plus the Nets pick. Would you have liked that deal? Hated that deal? Don't know what to think. Eric, what are you saying?
Well, I wrote back when the season first started how I wanted both Okafor and Noel, and I still really would love to have Okafor. I mean, he just turned 20 like 2 months ago, and so I look at it as if he were in this draft right now, he'd be the number 3 guy. It would be Simmons, Ingram, and then you'd have Okafor as the 3rd top prospect. Because after that, it's just
spot on.
It's just garbage after that. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be guys who come out of the rough and older guys who can contribute, but there's no real prospects like Okafor in that draft. And watching him on the court, the dude is barely 20, and he's pulling off post moves like he's been in the league for 10 years. It's ridiculous the way he can do his spin moves and his shooting, and like he's just fearless in there. His defense is a worry, obviously, because you have to be able to play defense. And I have been reading up a little bit on him, and apparently he does not work well in the running gun system that we've been working because he's kind of a lumberer, which is also a problem. But he would be your go-to guy. He would be someone that teams would have to worry about besides just camping on Isaiah all day. He would be probably a 20-point scorer or close to it with us. And he can block some shots, so he'd help with some of the rim protection issues. So I would absolutely do it. I mean, I would give up the package of probably every first-round pick of this draft, because you're not, even with all the picks that we have, you're not going to get a prospect like that. And I'm very concerned that Nets pick is not going to be in the top 2. So for me, it would be a no-brainer to trade for him.
Mark?
I don't think I would right now. I think I would definitely want to reevaluate once the lottery happens and we know what the pick is actually going to be. But one of the things, like we talk about all the time, how as soon as a draft pick is made, like 9 out of 10 times, it's already worth less value than before it happened. Mm-hmm. And like you said, Eric, if Okafor was the number 3 pick in this draft, that'd be great. I'd like drafting him 3rd. But Okafor is worth less to the Celtics now than if they'd been able to draft him back when he was in the draft. Because it's weird how that works. You would think like a year of NBA experience, but I mean, he's not like clearly a huge superstar. And the other thing that is a factor, I think, is that you only have control over these guys you draft. Is it 4 years? Or I think
it's 4, but then you can match anything they get after that.
Right.
So if you want a player, you have them for 8 or 9 years.
Is it nice? I don't know. Maybe, but the thing that I think about is it takes a while to rebuild. I just think about the teams that have won championships lately. I wrote an article a while back about the lottery and teams that win the lottery. The Spurs are the only team that's ever won the draft lottery that's also won a title at any point after. And all the best players that get picked high, like LeBron left Cleveland before he won. Shaq left Orlando. It's just weird how you only have a certain window. So the fact that that window is already a year shorter, I think, is something nobody really talks about that is worth factoring in. So that's part of it for me. I definitely would want to see what the Brooklyn pick is before I would make that deal.
What would it take for you to have to deal? It would be 3 or lower?
I don't know. I think maybe like 6.
Oh,
I think I would still probably rather have the 3rd pick. And the thing is, we don't
6 or lower. Then the lottery is like basically on my birthday.
It's a totally different
myself to death.
The other thing
6 or lower.
The other thing we don't think about is the draft. Like we think we know who's getting picked where, but we have no idea. Like the tournament changes everything. There's some guy that's going to have an enormous tournament that's going to be a top 4 lottery pick that we're not even talking about yet.
For sure, Paul.
But that could also be sorry to butt in, but that could also be a bad thing because somebody goes off, and we've seen it before. What was it? Tyrese Thomas, who went off in the
Derek Williams is my guy who always sticks out.
Yeah, and these guys go off, and then they rise up the boards, and then people pick them, and they turn out, they're really not that good like we thought they were 4 months ago.
Right, no, but I wasn't saying the Celtics would take one of those guys. I'm saying somebody else will take one of those guys, and then the Celtics might get the guy we want at a lower pick.
What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade. I would want to trade that pick until the lottery. I'm kind of with Mark on that sense. But if it was below 3, I would say definitely trade it for Okafor. I mean, the guy, we would have been so psyched to get him last year, and he hasn't. I mean, besides like cold cocking some guy in front of a club, he hasn't done too much on the court to really live down what we thought he would be as a player. You knew he was going to be a step slow on defense. You knew he was going to be a good offensive player, but he's definitely a guy who could put up 20 points a game. And I don't know. I don't really trust Dragan Bender that much. I would say with the 3rd pick, I would definitely trade it for Okafor.
I'm so torn on Okafor. One of my big things is he plays for such a crap team. And even the worst NBA team, right, is going to score 93 points a game or more. Those points need to come from somewhere. So I can't tell how good a player is unless I'm watching him every night. I know he has offensive skill. We've seen it versus Celtics. So I'm not saying he's just an average guy giving you 17 a game. He's well above average for a young kid offensively. He's really, really good offensively. But he stunk defensively in college. He stinks now defensively. He's slow. You give him the ball around the basket, he's going to score more often than not, and that's a huge positive. But I read an article recently. It's like all of the teams that win, and not just win titles, but really, really contend, their bigs protect the rim and stretch the floor, or stretch the floor. One or the other, if not both. He doesn't do both because he can't stretch the floor, and he'll get you this, whatever he averages, a block and a half. But in terms of actual how many points he gives up, their defense when he's on the court is is just horrendous. Even way worse than when he's off the floor. So I wouldn't call him a rim protector even if he gives you a block and a half a game. So I question how good he is, but I'm worried about this draft pick if it's not top 2. It doesn't mean you don't have a shot at getting a good player, because you obviously do. I don't think those are bad players going 3, 4, 5. But I read Chad Ford had a podcast, and I forget the guy who was on it, one of the draft experts from, I think, Draft Express. And he said that he would rather have a random chance at any of the guys who went 7 to 13 last year than the guys who went 1 to 7 are going to go 1 to 7 this year. That's and I'm not saying this guy's a lock to know to be right on this, because I always feel like I wrote this today. Drafts being bad or good, it's always overrated in one direction or the other. Right? 2013 draft was mocked as being one of the worst drafts ever at the time. That's the Olynyk draft, obviously the Anthony Bennett draft. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Rudy Gobert are mega studs in any draft, and that doesn't even count guys who like Olynyk, like Schroeder, like Oladipo, like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, like the kid in Portland, McCollum. Like that draft today, I just off the top of my head, I ripped off 10 guys. Like that's a horrible draft. There's a lot of talent there, and there was talent at the end of the draft, the middle, and the beginning. So my whole point, getting back to it, is I thought about it the other day. I was like, I kind of wish it happened, and then I thought about it more. I don't think I can trade a chance at Simmons or Ingram for Okafor, and maybe Philly doesn't do it if it's number 3, or maybe Philly does do it if it's number 3. But I think I would have to wait to see if it's not top 2. I don't know. I think that would it would just hurt too much to lose out on Simmons or Ingram, because I think both those guys are going to be. I really bet on them being studs. And Okafor, I don't know if he has the skill set for the modern NBA, even though I know he'll be a good piece. But other guys like that who can just fill up the stats, like Enes Kanter when he gets, I feel like it's like Enes Kanter can average 20 and 10 whenever he wants. You just give him the ball down low, but he can't do the other things. Zach Randolph's always been that way too. Anyone else have anything on the trade deadline? Surprises, anything like that? No, it was very quiet. It was very boring. Let's go to the summer. Kevin Durant, theory whispers from his former marketing manager saying Boston would be a great pick because, they have the young talent, they have a good organization, they have the history, and they're in the East, which really means you really only need to go against LeBron. And then once LeBron fades out, which, I don't know, sometime in the next 3 to 10 years, I don't know how long. I'm a little bit worried on how long LeBron could keep going for a while. But you only have to get through LeBron to get to the finals, really. You guys put anything into this. If you were Las Vegas, what would you set the odds on, what to 1 that Kevin Durant's coming to Boston this summer? Let's go to Mark.
15-1, maybe.
Ooh, so you're saying about 6%.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know that. I mean, I'd say if we're going percentages, probably like 75% he stays, and then a whole bunch of other teams have a small percent chance. But there's a really good sales pitch to be made if you're Danny Ainge. Like, we've got Brad Stevens, who everybody loves and wants to play for, the best up-and-coming young coach in the league. You're going to be in the Eastern Conference. If Durant was on the Celtics right now, they might go to the finals. They might beat Cleveland right now. And LeBron is definitely getting old and looking older than he's even getting. So there's a huge possibility there. And I think maybe they could sell him on, like, sign a 1-year deal and see if you like it, and then if it works out, then you can re-up for a long haul. There's a really good sales pitch, and I've been kind of working on this article on the back burner there was a podcast a long time ago that Zach Lowe did where he went over all the money and stuff, and there was a bunch of things there that really worked out for him in Boston too. I can't remember them off the top of my head. I don't think it's going to happen. There's a small chance, but it's definitely as reasonable as many other options, I think.
What do you think, Paul?
I think, I guess I would say like 20-1 maybe, a little less optimistic, but I mean, there's definitely a sales pitch. I hope that I'll listen to it. I think that if the Celtics go out in the first round of the playoffs, there's absolutely no chance. I think you're selling Durant on a team that he is the piece to contend and potentially make a finals. And I think there's also something too. I don't know if you guys remember this story from a long time ago, but Ainge getting fined $30,000 for sitting next to Durant's mom when he was in college. Ainge was pretty outspoken about Durant back in the day when people were going to go with Odin. And players that are wired like this, that are great players, don't forget the guys that believed in them from the start. And maybe
that's a great point.
Maybe they feel that Ainge is that person. So I don't know. I hope that it'll come to Boston. I hope they'll listen. And I don't know. It would be amazing.
I just hope he misses the Supersonics color scheme that much that he needs to come. Eric, what do you think?
I'm gonna go like 50-1 because I just don't think it's gonna happen. I mean, I agree with all the points you guys made. I think he would be great here. I think he'd love it. The fans would love him, obviously. He's a very likable guy. He would be the guy that we've been looking for. He would automatically. It would be LeBron versus Durant every single year, and that alone is really exciting. But I just don't see it. I don't think that he's going to look at our roster and say, okay, I have all you guys. Yes, Brad Stevens is great. Marcus Smart, whatever pick we get, Isaiah Thomas, Crowder, all these guys. But are those guys going to beat Kevin Love, Kyrie, and LeBron? Are those guys going to beat Steph Curry and Draymond? Are those guys going to beat the Spurs, who are going to be good for until we're all dead? I just don't think that he's going to look at that roster and say, you know what, I don't want to play with Russell Westbrook anymore. I'm going to go play with Isaiah Thomas instead.
Yeah, I was going to say 50-1 too. 2%, which is actually higher than I probably would have said a few months ago, because I'm a big believer that there's a lot of things that are very close to 0%. Like I probably would have gone below 0.5%, but I'm starting to at least say there's a Hail Mary chance. It's hard for me to imagine, right? He has a few options. One is the destroy the world option of going to Golden State. No one else wins any championships for the next few years. They win 76 games, maybe. But that would free up Harrison Barnes, who I'll get to because I love Harrison Barnes, to maybe come to the Celtics. That's one option. And then besides that, he'd have to really buy into the Eastern Conference theory to think that Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, this Nets pick, Avery Bradley, is better than staying with Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka, Enes Kanter. That's still a better situation in Oklahoma City, unless, and by the way, they can give him a lot more money. They can give him $150 million over 5 years with an opt-out, while the Celtics can only give him about $110 million over 4 years. So it is a significant amount of money that he'd be giving up. So it's really hard for me to imagine that. I do think I'd put Boston now ahead of a team like Washington, even though he's from there, because Washington's just been a disaster this year. John Wall wants out of Washington now, it seems like. So that's a positive. Maybe there's less teams involved now. I think the Celtics, if he were to go somewhere, I would be shocked. And I deal with so many Lakers fans for some reason, always coming after me on Twitter. And they always think that the Lakers really are this big free agent destination still. Teams aren't going just to go to LA. That's players. I mean, that's just not what we're at in the NBA. Players are going to win championships. They're not going to become movie stars. They're not going to go do what Shaq did 20 years ago. In this current age of social media and 24/7 news cycles, being in LA serves no purpose besides the fact that it's nice out a lot. And sure, is that like a small boost? Yeah, but it's not going to be why Kevin Durant goes to LA to play with Julius Randle and Nick Young. Like, get out of here with that crap. Not that the Lakers will never build again. They will. But this thought that it's still 1996 is laughable. So I put Kevin Durant, I mean, after Oklahoma City and then this Golden State horrifying theory, I'd put the Celtics on the next rung of teams. But I just think all those teams are really fighting an uphill battle. And like somehow LeBron's going to try to get in the mix. Isn't he? Like, I don't know what he's going to do, but he's going to like trade Kevin Love somewhere, trade Tristan Thompson somewhere, and then poof, there's going to be a bunch of salary cap space. It'd be awesome. Speaking of salary cap space, the Celtics have quite a bit of it. Ran the numbers today, right? You got $55 million. You throw in the draft picks, lowers it to about $48 million, and then they have their own free agents: Sullinger, Turner, Amir Johnson. This is considering if they cancel the option. But let's say that they only use $23 million of that. They let some people go, and they have a max cap spot available. That's $20 to $28 million, depending on how long the player has been in the league. Of the free agents, what's a realistic that you find, or most likely, who do you think they're really going to have a sit down with this summer and have a chance to woo? Who do you want to see it happen with? Eric, what about you?
I've got my sights set on Nicholas Batum. I think he would be a great player on this team. He's still only 27, turned 27 a couple months ago. He scores, he rebounds, assists, shoots the three well. He would be I mean, we all love Crowder, but he would definitely be an upgrade over Crowder just because he's a much more complete player. And I think that while he's not the superstar that we've all been looking for, he fills a need, and he would instantly make this team better, which is they're already a 3 seed, so he would help them challenge for the 2, and maybe not the 1, but they'd be in the 2 to 3 range still. And we'd still get to see the guys develop and see what happens there. We need a rim protector, but there's just not a lot out there, unless we're going to go after Horford at 30 years old, overpay him. Whiteside, I'm not a big fan of, just because I feel like if he gets paid, he's just going to kind of, all right, I'm going to not play as well. And apparently the Heat are about as good defensively when he's off the court as when he's on, so I don't know exactly how much he brings to the defensive side. So if we can't get a really good shot blocker, then I'd go for a wing, and I think Nicholas Batum would be great in green.
The defensive numbers can go a lot of different ways. In terms of his defensive rating, which measures the amount of points, I'm a big Whiteside guy. He gives up less points per possession than any other player in the NBA. His defensive rating is number 1 in the league. He is a monster. Guys like him do not become available. I would be all over Hassan Whiteside. And the whole thing about the money, that's only true. I mean, I know he's had some anger issues, but to think about him taking the money, which isn't even a full max because he hasn't been in the league long enough, and then not trying anymore, when he will be still a free agent again when he's 31 years old. It's like he wants to write his own NBA death certificate then. I don't buy into that as much for most players. I think he has such a rare skill set. He can run the floor. He's the best rebounder in the NBA on a per-minute basis. He's the best shot blocker in the NBA by such a wide amount that there really isn't a number 2 guy that's worth talking about. I mean, the guy gets 5 blocks per 36 minutes. He is a monster, and the Heat really can't re-sign him unless they somehow dump Bosch. And with his issues right now, there's just no way that's going to happen. So Whiteside would be high on my list. If Durant does go to Golden State, and that's the only way this is realistic, I would give Harrison Barnes the max and not think twice. I think him and Jay Crowder are the perfect 3-4 combination for in small ball. I think that the Celtics could Adding Harrison Barnes to this team would be a game changer. They would give LeBron so much trouble. They would give any 3-4 combination so much trouble. So Barnes and Whiteside are the two guys. If those two don't work out, because a lot of teams are after Whiteside, and Barnes most likely going back to Golden State unless the Durant thing happens. My third guy who I really love is Chandler Parsons. I know you said Batum, Eric. I like Batum too. Batum isn't a great shooter. I think he's at 34% from three. He's a solid shooter. We have those. Parsons is 42%. He's a knockdown guy who can do a lot of other things as well. I think he's a really good overall player who can just shoot the lights out. And I would love to add a guy on the wing who can shoot like that. Him and Crowder. He's really athletic too. I mean, he's white. I feel like that always hurts white guys. People don't think white guys can be that athletic. Chandler Parsons is a really good athlete. He's a good passer. He shoots the crap out of the basketball. So those are my guys that I would love to see if Kevin Durant it doesn't work out with him. What about you, Mark?
The thing about Whiteside, I mean, he's played pretty effectively for a while now. Like, he was a head case, and it took him a while to come around. But he hasn't had anything, all season, right? I think he's been pretty good.
He had a one-game suspension for something. He did get suspended once.
But even
got
like
last in the face.
All right, but even last season when he was starting to bust out, he still had he was getting thrown out all the time and doing stupid stuff. He's been pretty well behaved this year, so I'm definitely behind you there, Mike, on Whiteside. But I also think there's no one who should be out of play for a couple reasons. Like I was saying, how Danny Ainge has a great sales pitch for anybody. But the thing I really think, free agency this offseason is going to be insane. It's going to be unlike anything that the NBA has ever had before. And it's so hard to speculate. But the cap's going up more than $20 million. Every single team is going to have money to spend. Everything we've thought of about who's a max guy and who isn't a max guy is totally going to be completely different. And it just seems so...
See, I don't agree with that, Mark, because I don't think there's going to be more max guys. Everyone's going to get a raise, but the max salary is going up too. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Evan Turner is not going to get $5 million. He's going to get $8 million or whatever because the cap is going up like that. But there's still only so many max spots. You still don't want to be paying Jared Sullinger 25% of your cap. I just think... I hear what you're saying, and everyone's getting raises, and we don't. It's the financial landscape's a little wild. We got to see how it settles out. But I mean, if you're paying non-max guys max money, you're still going to get in trouble.
Right. You're right on that. More, I guess, less what I'm saying is the max. There's going to be a team that has $20 million to spend, and there's going to be nobody out there they want to sign for $20 million just to hit the salary floor. So then they're going to throw money at Evan Turner as a perfect example.
Right.
And so I just think. There's going to be a team who doesn't really necessarily want to pursue a guy, but they have money to burn, so they're just going to throw way too much at some guy. Batum might get an insane amount of money. Every free agent is just going to teams are just going to be throwing money at everybody all over the place. So I just feel it's almost not even worth speculating. It's just going to be this wild, wild west, and we just got to wait and see what happens.
What about you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I like adding to the wing. So the guys you mentioned. Parsons and Barnes and Batum would all be a good fit because I think ultimately you're competing with the Cavs and the Raptors, you're dealing with Kyrie and LeBron on one hand, and you're dealing with DeRozan and Lowry on the other, and that perimeter defense, and that's where you got to compete with these teams. So I think that's definitely an area where we need to get a little better. And as far as the landscape, I agree with Mark in that it's going to be a little bit hard to wrap your head around for sure. Where we're going to go with Turner and Sullinger and Zeller and some of those guys, are we going to pick up the options for Johnson and Jerebko? It's going to be really interesting to see how those initial free agent talks go and what who's coming back and who's going, because we could have 2 max contract offers out there. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if anyone's going to be worth those kind of deals.
I hope the Celtics don't overpay for good, because Danny Ainge is the best at finding good players. He finds good players in every way imaginable. He finds good players on cheap free agent deals. He finds good players just throwing in trades. He finds good players in the middle of the first round, the late first round. No GM in the league is better at finding good players. And sometimes when a good player you find a guy who's undervalued and then he performs, sometimes you need to let them go and get paid and then replace them with more cheap good talent. I think Evan Turner is a perfect example of that. He ended up being a great value at $3.7 million. I have heard the $10 million number thrown around. If he's making $10 million a year, to me that's trouble. I don't want any part of that. I'm not big on paying Jared Sullinger $10 million a year either. You can replace that kind of performance. Don't overpay for good when you're chasing great. That would be my advice to Danny Ainge, who I'm sure is watching this right now. This is a stupid hypothetical I thought of the other day when I was watching Karl Anthony Towns. How many players in the NBA? So the Celtics have 3 first-round picks this year. They have 1 next year, but could be the Nets pick. They have what's scheduled to be 3 in 2018, if you count that Memphis one, which is either going to be 2018 or 19. And then they have their own in 19 and their own in 20. I think I have every single one, right? That's 8 first-round picks in the next 5 years, 3 of which are Nets picks, and then all the second-rounders. How many players in the NBA would you trade every single pick the Celtics have between 2016 and 2024? I'll go first just to set the tone. Here are the people I thought off the top of my head, and I could be convinced on other guys because this is not something I've thought out all the way. But obviously, Steph Curry is the most obvious one in the world. Anthony Davis, to me, is very obvious. I would do it for Karl Anthony Towns because I believe he is Anthony Davis, except younger and under control for 3 more years than Davis. Those 3 are easy. I would probably still do it for LeBron because I know he's 31 years old, but he's declining with 25, 7, and 6 and an ability to recruit almost anybody he wants to Boston. I don't think there's any way if he comes to Boston that they don't go to the finals 4 or 5 straight years and have a shot at winning titles. So those 4 were pretty easy. After that, it got tough. There's some other guys that I would, but like I thought about it. Would I do it for DeMarcus Cousins, who I think is a top 10 guy? No. Would I do it for Klay Thompson? No. And I think Klay Thompson could average 28 points a game playing without Steph Curry. Yeah, I would do it for Durant. He's another guy, obviously, I think you almost have to do it for. Westbrook, these are tough calls. But I guess, are there any guys I haven't named that you guys would do this for? Is it a situation where you wouldn't do this no matter what? Because I know some people are in love with picks. They're in love with the potential. They're in love with building. But if these teams came along and were like, give us all your picks, and you'll have Kevin Durant, Curry obviously isn't going to happen. But which of these guys would you guys take for this sweetheart deal? And are there any guys I didn't talk about that you would do? Paul, what are you thinking?
I would do it for Kawhi.
Yep.
For sure. I mean, I guess for sure is kind of a ridiculous reaction, but I mean, it's a tough thing to give up 8 first-round picks for anyone. But I don't know. I would think about doing it for Klay Thompson. But it's wild to try and get a top 10 player. It's really, really difficult, as Ainge knows, and it's hard to even move up in the draft like we tried to do last year with Winslow. So if you could trade 8 picks for a real cornerstone guy, I would. I mean, if Cousins had a better temperament, I would do it for him as well. I don't know. It's a really interesting hypothetical for sure.
What do you think, Mark?
The thing that makes it a no-brainer, not that Curry wouldn't also be a no-brainer, but then Golden State's no longer Golden State, so then you got Curry and you can win. It's kind of the same thing. Like if you could do it for LeBron, you're in the finals all the time, and there's no competition in the East. Like then you're like the Celtics with LeBron playing against Toronto. I mean, that's a rout. Like that's not even. Yeah, there's no one left in the East. So obviously, you mentioned those two. Kind of like Harden has to be talked about, right? Like he was considered.
I wouldn't do it for Harden. He's got attitude and defense, man.
Yeah,
I think Harden could be had for less than that too.
I think he could. That's true. But I don't know. Like, if you like went back and looked at like one team's lottery picks, like think of the Grizzlies. I remember I wrote something about this once. They had a top 4 pick for like 9 years in a row, and like never got anything out of it. Like they got Bryant Big Country Reeves. I think this was even before maybe they got Marc Gasol. There was that other guy. I can't even remember. Sharif Abdur-Rahim. Like you can have a lot of good draft picks that don't turn into anything, and then the one star. Yeah, I might really honestly consider Harden even just because.
What do you think, Eric?
Well, Kawhi was the one that jumped out at me just because the dude's probably going to get his second Defensive Player of the Year award, which is crazy for a wing. He usually goes to a big man, but he's got ice in his veins too. He can knock down game winners, like doesn't even blink. He's kind of like Tim Duncan with that kind of mentality where like it just doesn't get phased. I think Porzingis could also be another one that could be considered, just because the dude has potential for days. He's a 7-footer who could knock down threes, block shots. He could get a little bit bigger, but I think that dude has loads of potential. If Cat wasn't in this draft class, Porzingis would be easily Rookie of the Year right now. But everyone else is like the guys you mentioned, LeBron, Curry, all those guys. But yeah, I think I would focus probably on Kawhi or maybe Porzingis.
Yeah, Porzingis is a good one. I think he goes in that same category with Karl Anthony Towns. I love Karl Anthony Towns. I think he's going to be I think he's going to win an MVP, 2 MVPs, that type of player. He's incredible. Anyone else have anything else about the current team, maybe, or do you want to wrap it up a little bit before the game? You guys, any final closing thoughts?
I will just counterpoint when you were talking about Hassan Whiteside and Barnes. I am a little bit worried about Barnes that he might be another Jeff Green, because I've heard from Warriors fans that he can kind of disappear sometimes, and he can kind of get a deer in the headlights look, and he'll go off for 21 night, and then he'll just kind of fade away. So I would be a little concerned about that. And for Whiteside, his rebounds are really good, but I've also heard that that's because he doesn't box out at all, and he just goes for the rebound every single time. So the other opposing big men get tons of rebounds as well. So I would be a little bit worried about his defense. I know he blocks shots for days. That's a given. He's amazing at that. But there are some concerns with those other guys.
All right. What do you think? Anyone else? Closing thoughts?
I was wondering what you guys thought of, what we're gonna do with so many draft picks, and the trade deadline was quiet. Like, are the days leading up to the draft just gonna be filled with moves? Because we don't have enough roster spots to put 8 players. Not that we would with all the second rounders, but I mean, what do you guys think is gonna happen?
You gotta use Europe. Danny Ainge hates drafting Europeans. I don't care what the Celtics say about not having a philosophy. They have drafted 1 European in 13 years under Ainge, and it was Semi Urdan with the last pick of the 08 draft or whatever that was. You need to draft Europeans with some of these second rounders, and you also need to start consolidating your assets. It includes the players who are currently on the team. You have the 4 young guys who don't even play. You have the 8 picks this year. Those 12 things need to be consolidated down into 6, 7, 8 things. And if you end up with the 16th pick from Dallas and the 22nd pick from Boston, and you can package 16, 22, and 31 to get a guy you really like at 11. And I'm not saying you need 2 to tango. I know the Miami Justice Winslow thing didn't work out, but they also traded a 16 and 2 seconds for 13 in Olynyk a couple of years ago. So just because the Justice Winslow thing didn't happen doesn't mean no one in the history of the NBA has moved up. Like, I feel like people use that too much to say these picks are worthless. Like, yes, that's one time where Michael Jordan fell in love with Frank Kaminsky. But if you have the situation arise where you can trade 16, 22, and 31 for 11 and get a guy you're really confident in at 11, Danny Ainge is to pull the trigger on some of those types of moves, because you're 100% right, Paul. Between the 4 guys who don't even play right now and all these other guys, you don't have the space. Even if
I wouldn't be surprised if you see Ainge kind of kick these assets down the road a little bit. I think a team could fall in love with someone who's at 16, and he's like, okay, give me your 2017 first-round pick. And I think he could do that with a lot of second-rounders too. I hope he doesn't just ship them for cash, but I could see 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 of these picks being conveyed later on.
Draft Europeans in the second round. Draft the 7-2 guy playing for a park and rec team in Turkey that averages like 2 points a game. Because if you look at every draft, going back, go look in the last 15 drafts or whatever since Ainge took over. He passed on a good Euro quite a bit in the second round for a good solid 4-year pro like Colton Iverson or Justin Reed or some of these bums. If they draft 4-year players in the second round this year, I am going to scream. They don't have room for these guys. Just don't do it. We own Colton Iverson's rights still, so that's a positive of this. He's averaging like 7 points a game in like one of the low-level leagues over there. But yeah, maybe they sell one off, like you said, Eric, and then trading down the line, but use Europe and consolidate these assets. That's my hope for them. And that they're consolidating assets doesn't mean you're trading them all for a superstar, but maybe it's moving up 5 picks in this year's draft or something. Anything else, Mark? You got a thought?
Yeah, I'll just throw one more thing out there. One of our writers, Matt's got this piece he's going to publish tomorrow about consolidating assets. So if you got Jarebko and Amir Johnson, if you didn't pick up both those guys, you let Sully and Zeller go sign elsewhere, the restricted free agents. You get all the cap money you possibly can. You could fit in Al Horford and Kevin Durant both in there.
All right, there you go. I will welcome that. I would welcome that. I do think that going after 30, 31-year-old free agents, unless you're bringing in someone like Durant too, that neutralizes the whole situation. Bringing in someone like Horford and building with the young guys in Horford, I'm not totally against it, but I feel like the biological clocks don't quite line up. I don't know if Al Horford's going to have enough by the time the Celtics become championship contenders, and paying him $27 million a year for him or Howard, that worries me. But if you're bringing in Kevin Durant, bring in Al Horford too.
Yeah.
You can make the team as old as you want if you're bringing in Kevin Durant. That is completely A-okay by me. All right, that's going to be an interesting read. You guys should check that out. But we will leave now. We get the game on in like 10 minutes versus the Bucks. So thanks, Eric, Mark, and Paul. And we'll see you guys soon. We've been doing these a little more often lately. We'll keep it going through the end of the regular season and the playoffs. All right, take it easy.